He died fasting and discovered the truth that 99% of Christians ignore. Heaven does not move when the stomach hurts, but when the heart surrenders. Now, listen to what he experienced on the other side. My name is Theos Rivenhart. I am 45 years old, married to Anna for 21 years, and father to Samuel and Clara, 2 teenagers who are my world. I live in Ashford, Kentucky, a small town where everyone knows each other and no one locks their front door. I work as an IT technician at a local public school. Nothing glamorous, but enough to keep the bills paid most of the time. And on Sundays, I would put on my starched dress shirt, the face of a devoted servant, and go to church where I was seen as a reference in prayer, fasting, and commitment. Many people admired me. They said I was a man of faith, but no one imagined what was really going on inside. Behind the memorized verses and fervent prayers, there was a frustrated man, a man who fasted like someone knocking on a locked door, hoping God would open it soon and say something, anything. But the silence, always the silence. I started fasting for 1 day, then 3, then 7. I tried Daniel's fast, the partial, the complete. I even did 21 days with only juice and water, thinking it would speed up heaven. It was as if I was trying to make God move, as if my effort would force him to respond. The most curious thing, the more I fasted, the more distant he seemed. I don't say this with resentment, but with sincerity. I fasted and prayed. But I felt that God wasn't listening, and I started to think, is it me? Is there still something missing? So, I tried to do more. I fasted on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I put verses in my status, posted phrases like, fasting is not an option, it's a weapon. But my soul was becoming dry. On the outside, everything seemed in place. Inside, I just wanted to understand where I was going wrong. It was on a Thursday night that I made the decision. I would start a new fast, 14 days with only water and juice. It would be radical. This time God will speak to me, I thought. I was determined. I just didn't know that heaven had very different plans. On the morning of the 10th day, I woke up weaker than usual, but I ignored it. I thought it was just part of the process. I went to the service at night, came back exhausted, took a shower, and it was there in that ordinary moment that everything happened. The last thing I remember is the sharp pain in my stomach and the cold bathroom floor. Then, silence. But it wasn't the silence from before. It was another kind of silence, one that would make me see what I never understood, and hear what I spent my life trying to force. I didn't wake up like someone who opens their eyes after fainting. It was different. It was as if my consciousness had been taken to another place. Without a body, without weight. Time there seemed to have stopped. Everything was quiet, but it wasn't the kind of silence that hurts. It was a silence that carried something. As if everything around was waiting for something to happen. Inside, I knew. I was no longer on Earth. I also didn't feel fear. It was strange because I always thought that if I died, I would feel terror or despair. But there was such a deep peace that for a moment I just stood still, trying to understand. That's when I felt the presence. I didn't see a bright light or angels. I just realized that someone was with me, and it wasn't just anyone. It was the one I had cried out to so many times, fasted so many days, sought with so much effort. God was there. And even without seeing a face or form, I knew. It was him. Then there was a voice. It wasn't loud, but firm. And when he said my name, Theos, everything inside me disarmed. There was no judgment. There was no anger. There was only truth. It was as if he saw me completely, and still called me with affection. He spoke to me with simplicity. He said that I had come there with a heart full of questions. And it was true. I always fasted asking for answers. I always believed that the hungrier I felt, the closer to God I would be. Fasting for me was almost an exchange. I offered my effort, my deprivation, and expected him to move in return. God knew this. He said exactly what I could never admit, not even to myself. He said that I fasted expecting something, but rarely fasted just to be with him. And that moved me. I started to remember my fasts. I treated them like keys. I fasted for healing, for direction, for a change in financial life. I made lists, schedules, spiritual challenges. posted on social media impactful phrases like fasting moves heaven. But there, before God, I realized that the one who needed to move was me, because heaven was never far. I was the one seeking in the wrong way. God told me with a calmness that dismantled me, "You fast like someone knocking on a safe's door." But I am a father, and a father is not unlocked with effort. A father is embraced with surrender. I didn't know what to answer. For the first time in my life, his silence made sense. He wasn't ignoring me, I just didn't know how to approach. Then he said something that made me cry. And not with tears in my eyes, but with the soul. "You wanted me to speak, but you didn't quiet down inside." And there, I understood. I did fast, but spent the days distracted, anxious, waiting for a supernatural experience, without ever stopping everything and just being with him. I wasn't fasting out of love. I was fasting for results. At that moment, everything started to change. Not because of a mystical revelation, but because I saw clearly something I ignored for years. I sought answers from a God who just wanted to be my father. And he didn't want my hunger. He wanted my attention. After that silence, full of truths, God began to teach me, but he didn't teach like a master with a board and chalk. He spoke like a father speaks to a tired son, without haste, without formulas, just with clarity and with love. He told me, "You think fasting is not eating, but fasting is not just that. Fasting is exchanging something important for something even more valuable." And then he showed me a scene. It was a boy of about 10 years old. He was in the playground with his father. He had an ice cream in his hand, all happy. But when he saw his father smiling, he stopped, looked at the ice cream and threw it away. He sat on his father's lap and stayed there, quietly. The father hugged him tightly. And God told me, he gave up pleasure to gain presence. That's fasting. That dismantled me. I fasted for goals. I fasted like someone fulfilling a marathon goal. But I had never done it out of longing. I had never stopped eating, just to sit on the Father's lap and stay. I always wanted something in return. And God knew. He continued showing me images. An elderly lady, alone in a humble kitchen. She took the plate of food off the table, knelt down, and said softly, "Today I just want to hear your voice." The food there was little, but the love was much, and heaven poured out at that moment. She fasts out of love, not for results. "That's why I speak to her," he said. Then I saw a young man saying he was fasting because he had left Instagram. God looked at me with a sad smile and said, "He thinks he's fasting, but he's just resting from the noise. That's good, it's beautiful, but it's not fasting. It's a purpose. And purpose has value, but don't confuse it with what breaks chains." Then he showed me something I never forgot. A heart, but it was divided. Half beat for God. The other. For miracles, answers, status, victories. And he said, when the heart is divided, the fast doesn't rise, because it's not hunger from above. It's hunger disguised from earth. That hit me hard. I began to understand. Fasting is not about leaving the stomach empty. It's about keeping the ego quiet. It's about clearing the table of desire so that only God sits with you. And the only conversation there is love. He finished with a phrase that still echoes inside me. When someone fasts only with the body, heaven remains silent. But when someone fasts with the heart, I arrive even before the prayer ends. After God showed me what true fasting was, there was a time of silence. But it wasn't a silence of disdain. It was as if he was waiting for me to absorb. And that's when the fasts I had done began to come to mind. The counts, the calendars, the challenges, the posts with verses about sacrifice, the supplication prayers. All of this passed before me with painful clarity. Then God spoke again, this time with a simplicity that dismantled me. "You did a lot, Theos. A lot of right things. But you left out the most important." Those words held me. Because deep down I knew exactly what he was talking about. For years I dedicated myself to fasting like someone fulfilling a spiritual duty. I endured hunger, kept firm. But deep down I was trying to make God move. As if heaven were a locked system that only ran when I pressed the right buttons. God knew this. And he didn't come to humiliate me, but he showed me in his way. He told me that every time I fasted, what weighed the most was not what I was leaving to eat, but the reason behind it. Then he showed me something that broke my heart. A kind of shelf with many letters, all in my handwriting. Each letter represented a prayer of mine made during some fast. Some asked for healing, others asked for direction, others cried out for an answer, change, deliverance. They were all there. God looked at me and said with firmness and tenderness. I read each one, but none of them were just to be with me. There was always a request, never just presence. At the time I was speechless, because it was true. I couldn't remember a single time I fasted just to love God. In all of them there was a goal, a cause, an urgency. He looked at me and said, "You sought me with discipline, but not with longing. You expected me to speak quickly, heal quickly, change quickly." Before we continue, just one request, please subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep going. Before continuing, just one request, subscribe to the channel. This helps us a lot to continue. But I'm not a button you press when you're hungry. I'm a father, and a father approaches when he sees the child just wanting to be close. That explanation broke me inside, because it was all so simple. And at the same time I had never seen it that way. My fasting wasn't bad, but it was poorly directed. I was fasting like someone trying to unlock heaven, and God just wanted to be desired, not forced. Before finishing, he said one last sentence that completely broke me. If you had fasted just to love me, I would have spoken on the first day. At that moment, I understood. Heaven was never far away. I was the one who never came with the right heart. And now, maybe it was the first time I was really close. I was still digesting everything he had shown me. When God continued, now, it wasn't about what I did wrong, but about what he always wanted from me. It was as if he was opening his heart, without accusations, just with a desire to teach me to see differently. He started by saying, "Talis, heaven doesn't move when the stomach hurts. Heaven moves when the heart surrenders." That phrase kept hammering inside me. I always thought that the intensity of fasting was what made the difference. Days without food, weakened body, long prayers. But God didn't seem impressed with any of that. He wanted something simpler, deeper, something I had never truly offered. Then he showed me an image. A father sitting in the living room, reading. The little son runs in, turns off the television, leaves the video game, and simply sits on the father's lap without asking for anything. He rests his head and remains silent. The father closes the book, holds the son in his arms, and smiles. "This is the kind of fasting that touches heaven," said God, "when you let go of what distracts you just to embrace me. When there is no list of requests nor anxiety for an answer. Just longing." He explained to me that fasting is not an exchange. It's not something we do for God to do something in return. Fasting is when you tell your flesh, "Today you don't command. Today the one who has a voice is the Spirit. And the Spirit wants to hear me." Then, he used another image. He showed me a woman in the kitchen. It was early. She had made coffee but didn't drink it. Instead, she folded a cloth over the table, opened the Bible, and started talking to God like someone talking to an old friend. Nothing rehearsed, nothing pretty, just true. She said, "Lord, today I want to hear more than speak. Teach me to love you." God looked at me and commented, "She doesn't fast for miracles, she fasts for love." And when love is the motivation, I approach even before she finishes the prayer. Then he told me something that sounded like a secret. The fasting that touches heaven doesn't start in the stomach, it starts in the room. When you close the door, silence everything, and give me priority. When the time you reserve to eat becomes time to surrender. The food only leaves the plate, but the surrender needs to leave the heart. He reminded me of how many times I fasted in a hurry, with a full mind, trying to fit God between tasks. You fasted but kept your heart busy. How did you expect to hear me if the noise inside you was greater than the silence between us? At that moment, everything became clear. What God wanted wasn't my hunger, it was my attention. Heaven is not moved by effort, it is moved by communion. And when communion comes first, the answers are consequences. not a prize. Before finishing, he spoke with a smile in his tone. You can stop eating for 20 days. But if you don't give me your time, your silence, your listening, all you'll achieve is losing weight. I lowered my head, and for the first time in years, I felt free. After everything he showed me, a thought came to me as a reflection. And now, what about those who can't fast? Those who have health problems, those who work 2 jobs, have small children, barely have time to stop. I didn't even need to ask. God answered me before. He told me, "Do you think I keep counting how many hours you went without eating? I count how much you want to be with me." That brought me a relief I didn't know I needed. Because for a long time I thought fasting was the performance. That it only counted if it was long, difficult, radical. And God showed me it wasn't about that. He explained to me that each child has a capacity, and that He as the Father doesn't expect the same from everyone. He knows our limits. There are people who can fast all day. There are people who can only skip 1 meal. And there are those who can't abstain from food because of their body. I know that. I don't judge that. I just want truth. He showed me a simple scene. A woman with diabetes, preparing a light broth, and sitting at the table with the Bible open. Instead of blaming herself for not being able to fast like others, she said, "Lord, this is my time with you, and this is what I can give today, but it's yours." And God smiled as He showed me that. She gives me what she can. And because of that, I receive it as if it were everything. Then He talked to me about purposes. He said they are not fasting, but they also have value. When someone chooses to give up something they like, coffee, social media, soap operas, but it's the kind that clears the way to hear me better. He showed me that purpose prepares the soul, reduces the noise to a fine heart. But fasting is when the Spirit takes control. If you can't fast now, Thales, then make a sincere purpose, one that costs something. It doesn't have to be huge, it just needs to be true. At that moment, he reminded me of how many times I proposed to stop something, and on the second day, I had already forgotten. He says, the problem is not what you deliver, it's how seriously you take what you promised. Heaven hears your intention even before your action. And finally, he said something that seemed simple but fell like a key in my understanding. The little with truth weighs more in heaven than the much done just out of obligation. At that moment, I realized that anyone can start. That there is no formula. That God is not demanding a perfect sacrifice. He just wants sincerity, constancy, and a heart that even stumbling comes back, always comes back. After everything I heard, a thought arose very quietly inside me. But does fasting, even with the right heart, make any difference up there? Does anything really change? God knew. He knew what I was thinking, and without saying a word, He just showed. Before me appeared a dark room. It looked like a house. Inside, a woman prayed, kneeling. It was dawn. She trembled with cold. Beside her, a pot with half-cooked rice on the stove. I realized she had chosen not to have dinner. That was her fast. But what God wanted to show me wasn't her. It was what happened around her while she prayed. I saw chains being broken in the son's room. I saw a spirit of confusion retreating from the house. I saw a light turning on inside her. A light that no candle, no lamp on earth could produce. God spoke, firm and sweet. When someone fasts with truth, the spiritual world moves. The enemy loses access. The darkness loses argument. And I approach. Then, He showed me another man. A simple middle-aged man sitting in the back pew of an empty church. He fasted silently, just with a glass of water. He didn't speak much, didn't make a fuss. But there in that silence, his soul said, "I want the Lord more than anything." And then God showed me heaven. I saw angels approaching. I saw a movement as if a response was being released. I saw a kind of glow that has no translation. And I realized that fasting doesn't force God to act. Fasting removes what hinders. It opens the space. It arranges the altar. God explained simply, fasting cleans the environment, removes the excess, silences the noise. When you truly fast, it's as if you say, "Lord, you can enter. Here it is clean. Here it is only yours." And then He revealed something that caught me by surprise. There are people who never receive the answer. because they never open the space. They ask me for direction, but don't clear the ground. They ask me for healing, but don't remove the pride. They ask me for intimacy, but don't silence the soul. I stood still, absorbing that. Because it was true. Most of my prayers were made on disorganized soil. I asked, but never cleaned the house. I just wanted God to come in and act. But I didn't open the space. God finished by saying, when someone fasts with a surrendered heart, I not only respond, I stay. And where I stay, hell does not remain. At that moment I understood. True fasting is not about seeking miracles. It's about preparing the ground for God Himself to come and dwell. After God showed me everything, the value of sincere fasting, what happens in the invisible and what He really seeks, I remained silent. Not for lack of questions, but because for the first time, I felt that everything inside me was at peace. That's when He approached. I didn't see steps. I didn't see a face, but I felt as if the whole world bowed around Him. And yet, He spoke to me like someone sitting next to a tired child. Without haste, without demand. Talis, He said, what makes me happiest is not when you fast for many days. It's when you return to my lap, even if it's for a few minutes. I don't want your performance. I want you. That wasn't just beautiful. It was true. Because for years, I was the one who fasted to be approved, to prove I was spiritual, that I was strong. And now, I heard from God Himself that He never expected an impossible effort. He only expected a present heart. You don't need to impress me, He continued. You just need to remember me when you wake up, when you eat, when you breathe. Fasting is just a way of saying, Father, today I chose to desire more than anything else. I wanted to ask how to keep this alive, how not to forget all this upon returning. But even before the doubt took shape, He answered, the soul forgets what is forced, but keeps forever what is lived with love. You don't need to promise me that you will fast for 21 days. Start with just one, but do it out of love. Talk to me. Don't push me to the end of the list. His tone was calm, but each word carried the weight of eternity. He reminded me that life is made of small choices, that it is not the time without food that transforms, but the time with Him, and that even on busy days, a moment of sincere silence can be more powerful than hours of empty fasting. Before letting me go, He said something I will never forget. When you fast without wanting to hear me, you only feel hunger. But when you fast with longing, I arrive before the hunger, and at that moment, I no longer wanted to promise. I just wanted to start over. It was as if someone pulled me back with their life. Nothing abrupt, nothing frightening. Just a strange sensation, as if I were returning from a place I never wanted to leave. And in the next second, everything went dark. Then came the sounds, metallic noises, hurried voices, a persistent beep. I opened my eyes slowly. The hospital lights blinded me for a moment. Next to the bed, Anna, my wife, was standing holding my hand so tightly, it seemed she was afraid to let go. Her eyes were red. They couldn't stop looking at me, as if she needed to confirm that I was really there. I took a deep breath, confused but alive. I heard someone saying, "He's back." Regular heartbeat. It was a doctor. There were nurses running back and forth. Later I found out I had been dead for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Cardiac arrest caused by a stomach collapse, a direct consequence of prolonged fasting. A ruptured ulcer. Simple as that, real, mortal. No one understood how I came back, but I knew, and it wasn't because of the juice, nor the effort, nor my consecration. I came back because God still had something to do with me, and even more, something to do in me. In the following days I needed to stay hospitalized, fasting, only hospital liquid, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. In fact, each spoonful of soup felt like an act of worship. Each sip of water was a chance to give thanks. The hunger now was different. On the first night out of the ICU, I asked for silence in the room. Anna looked at me and understood. I asked to be left alone. The nurse left. The room became quiet, and there, without an open Bible, without praise, without a prayer list, I just closed my eyes and said, "Father, now I understand." At that moment, I didn't cry out of despair or exaggerated emotion. I cried like a child who spent a lifetime trying to earn a love he always had. That was it. I had spent decades trying to deserve heaven, while heaven just wanted to embrace me. After I returned home, nothing seemed to be in the same place. The kitchen, the furniture, even the rooms seemed smaller. But what had changed the most was inside me. Anna noticed it in the first few hours. I, who used to insist on appearing strong in faith, now preferred silence. My children, Samuel and Clara, found it strange when I stopped using ready-made phrases and just sat with them at the table, looking into their eyes and asking how they really were. Without hurry, without a cell phone. The following Sunday, I went to church. No one knew exactly what had happened. Some said it was a miracle. Others that I was lucky it didn't matter. For the first time, I entered that place without thinking about what I was going to show. I entered because I wanted to be close to God. Just that. I deactivated social media indefinitely. Not to make a vow, but because I understood how much I lived trying to show consecration instead of living consecration. I put away the fasting calendar. Not because fasting lost its value, but because now I wanted to fast with truth and not with a schedule. Today I still fast, but only when the Spirit calls me. And when I do, it is to silence, to listen, to clean the room and prepare the table. And if my soul is too noisy to fast with purity, then I just sit and say, Father, today, I just want to be with you. That is enough. Sometimes, people come to me wanting fasting tips. They want to know how many days, how many meals, what can or cannot be done. And I always respond the same way. Fasting is not a method, it is a place. And in that place, God does not enter through sacrifice. He enters through longing. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't do longer fasts. I would do more sincere fasts. And if you, like me, are tired of trying to force heaven to respond, stop right now. Close the bedroom door, breathe, and say, I didn't come to ask. I just came because I missed you. If that's all you can say, it's already enough. Because as I learned in the most unexpected way possible, heaven moves. When the heart surrenders. What an incredible and transformative story. The Bible reminds us in Isaiah, chapter 58, verse 6. Is this not the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke. Thank you very much, Talis, for sharing this profound experience with us. And to you who watched until now, may the blessings of heaven invade your life with peace, truth, and communion. See you in the next video.